Sure, I would do honestly.
At the spa. What was it? It's a spa, and what else? You know, there's so much going on this property. Whatever you need is going to be catered for, was the promise that we had. So, ladies and gentlemen, then on that note, please allow me to invite onto stage our guests for the first panel discussion. The first disclaimer is that we've had quite a number of changes, so what you have on our program and what I have on my end will not necessarily look the same. I can't explain all the changes, but all safe to say that we do have many of the key parties represented. So in no particular order, please allow me to welcome on stage the President of the Patriotic Alliance, Gayton Mckenzie, Deputy Secretary General of the IFP, Albert Mwango, Vuyiswa Ramaphosa, National Chairperson of Rise Mzansi, Solim Simanga, Gayton Leader of the Democratic Alliance. Please give them all a round of applause as they come up. Oh, please come on, sir. And this is Mr. Ntandi, who is the Treasurer General of the MK Party. It's a former Treasurer General. Sorry, we can't keep up, there's so much happening.
Yeah, I can't keep up with the changes there.
All right, later on this morning, we'll also be joined by Mr. Sikezi Galala, NEC member of the ANC, when the Senate is also just held up on his way here. So this is quite an important subject, particularly for Black business, when they think about the socio-economic context of our country and effectively what transformation and what inclusive growth needs to look like versus the reality of where it is. Part of the conversation that we had yesterday was the role and the influence on politics and the decisions that are coming out of the political space that influence the state of the economy. Maybe just to start off with, your general reflections on that. How do you reflect on the moment, the impact of how we do politics in this country, and how that is having an impact on our economy and the state of the economy? I'll start off with you, Mr. Mckenzie.
Thank you very much. I think, you know, when you look at our politics in South Africa, there's absolutely nothing wrong with politics. I'll tell you what I'm saying there first in relation to the GNU. The ANC was in power for 30 years. They lost an election. Where on the African continent we went to bed after the results and nobody worried about the coup, nobody worried that the army will intervene. That shows you that we've come a long way. Secondly, you know, the state has become, everybody wants to blame the state, but I think the majority of the blame should go to black business. Let me explain why I'm saying that. The state has really created a space for us to operate in. What you see today wasn't possible 30 years ago. BE is not only doing a deal with somebody and becoming a BE partner. BE is also the ability to be able to do deals freely without legislation preventing you as a black person to do deals. If you look at black business people today, the majority of them, it's deal after deal, deal after deal. But they don't understand. BE has not failed. We have failed BE, and I'm including myself in all the black millionaires today. You can ask them one question. how many deals have you done? He will tell you, no, I'm in this board, I'm in this deal. Then you ask him, how did you help to change the trajectory of the ordinary black person? And then he will be found wanting. So I'm saying BE has not failed. It is us, and I'm once again including myself in it. It is us that failed BE. We can deny it as much as we like, but you look at all the black dollar millionaires. Give them a list of the deals they've done, give them a list of the boards they're sitting on, and then give them another list and say, right here, how much did you contribute?
Give me a practical example. What is it in particular that you believe black business can and should have contributed? So when you say, if you reflect on the time of sitting on different boards, what influence did you have practically? What could the alternative have been?
Number one, empowerment for me, it's becoming embarrassing when we force ourselves to be empowered by white people constantly. Let me tell you why I'm saying that. Can I make you a practical example? When you have nothing and you do a deal, you do the deal, you're no longer poor. You are now a dollar millionaire. But you still insist, you are now empowered, but you still insist to become a partner in a business that a white man has built. You have enough money to start. You have enough money to start, but that's a conversation we don't want to hear. I have had to resign from several of my businesses. Nobody, I can understand why white people are kicking back when it comes to BE. Because you have a man that is insisting, I want to be part of your business. And this man has done a deal last year that gave him 200 million that he can start his own business. But he is still, you can go and check all the BE deals. It is the usual suspects, it is the same people doing deal after deal. And that is the truth. We can't run away from it. A practical example I'll make you, let's look at the Jewish community. There's some sort of thing that we can learn from them when it comes to empowerment. We're sitting with so many black millionaires, but we have the highest unemployment rate. The highest. So surely I think that if you go to Russia, all the millionaires there has a certain duty where they live in the area, where they have to do stuff, and they're doing it. I'm just saying, as for the world that might sound bad, I'm a dollar millionaire. So we need to do more. We need to do more. All of us. We need to really, really do more and stop just saying the state. The state is not perfect. But I'm saying that all blame cannot just go to the state. We need to do more, but there's an accumulation syndrome. We just get more, we get more. Which is not even giving back to where you stay. Go and check the schools of where some of us have gone to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who is what?
It is on. Thank you, Kathy. If I may just begin by acknowledging the leadership of the BBC and my fellow panelists. I must say it's quite serendipitous to be here right now. As a former long-standing member of the BBC myself, to now be here on the stage with the bad guys is really something that one has to reflect on. But you go where you are needed, and I'm glad to be able to play my role on this side of the fence. Kathy, to answer your question, South Africa is at an inflection point. We are 31 years into our democracy. And in this time, we have had ample opportunity to build our nation, to grow our economy, and to reflect on the type of nation that we want to be. I'm of the view, of course, that even though there are a lot of things that are not working in our country, we cannot discard and disregard the many things that have happened and the ground that we've covered in the last 30 years. And I'll touch on some of that just now. But I think from a governance and from a politics perspective, which was your question, is that the key shift that we see now is that governance is no longer the sole domain of a single party. That is the key shift that has happened, not just in terms of the new era of coalition government, but actually even in the psyche of the voters and the citizens. The voters and the citizens understand that there are multiple paths to change. There's multiple paths to power. But it also brings with it a new era of political and ideological contestation. And we see that even internally within the GNU. We see it within the different coalition governments, be it at a local level, provincial level, and otherwise. The contestation requires of us also a measure of collaboration. So you would have had, for example, 5 years ago, a very clear distinction between the opposition and government. We now sit at a point where most parties worth their salt are either both. They can be both opposition and government, or they exist in a multitude of spaces. So you may find yourself at local government being government, at provincial being opposition, national being government. So those lines don't exist anymore, and it requires us now, and I believe that we are entering an age of collaborative and politics that is driven by consensus and by consensus building and finding joint solutions. And I think some of the issues, of course, we know are the biggest issues. Unemployment is probably the single biggest issue that we have to address in the next era. And that's structural, it's systemic. And so the change that's going to have to happen is going to come, in my opinion, out of an effort of the parties that are in government to find each other, to be able to craft that common path, to be able to create that common policy platform, to stop with all the shenanigans in politicking and get busy with the work of governing and leading and creating a vision for our future. Just as a last point, Kathy, I think, and this is something that we don't talk enough about, is the conversation and the work that has yet to happen around nation building. And I'm not talking about nation building that happens after the Springboks win a match. I'm talking about the hard slog work of building a national identity, of agreeing and having a common vision as a country. If you look at countries that have developed rapidly in the last century, one of the key features of such countries is that they have a very clear sense of national purpose. And I won't have to name them all, but we know them. A lot of the Asian tigers, even some of the countries that we see developing on our very continent. We are being left in the dust by our own counterparts on this continent who are tracking at 6-8% growth on average. And a foundation of that is being able to forge a common vision and a common purpose as a country. We cannot even begin to talk about contesting in the international space, competing in the international arena, if we are so busy fighting ourselves internally. So I believe that the work that has to happen to translate our aspirations as a country into dividends is, one, the work of nation building, but two, the work of also reforming and rethinking what transformation needs to look like. And I think Minister Mckenzie's touched on some of that, but I think the work of transformation is no longer just about deals. It's not just about BEE deals anymore. It's actually about saying, how do we use procurement as a strategic lever to drive industrialization? How do we ensure that with every rand that is spent, be it by government or private sector, we are delivering jobs and meaningful opportunities for our young people? It's about thinking dynamically about transformation. Transformation is not one piece of policy. It's not BEE. It's also the competitive landscape. We know that a lot of companies, small companies and black companies, are edged out because of anti-competitive behavior. We must strengthen our mechanisms to deal with that. We must look at issues of spatial planning. We must look at targeting inequality as a specific thing. And we need to think a lot more holistically and broadly about the transformation project beyond just one single piece of policy called Black Economic Empowerment. I think it can do what it does, but it cannot do it all, and we need to be able to look at a number of different instruments powered and driven by industrialization if we are going to grow this economy.
All right, thank you for that, Louisa. Soli?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to members that are here and to the leadership of the BBC. I think we need to own up to a number of things here, Kathy. One is that what we have seen in government has been more slogans than real action taking place year in, year out. And that has really led to, call it a makeup on something that we should have actually deconstructed and rebuilt. What do I mean by that? Let's look at a number of things that has transpired in the last 20 years, if I may put it in those periods, and say, what has actually then happened to really change the lives of the people of South Africa? And I make an example of what transpired before, during the days of apartheid, or even before the days of apartheid, when the English and Africans themselves, there was that battle, and there was actually the independence of the Afrikaner people. One of the things that they did, and they did very well, was that they then took an education system, they transformed it into an education system that began to talk to what they wanted to get, the Afrikaner studies, from the English. They were able to build universities that ensured that they were able to then get some of the best engineers in the world. Some of the most technical skills that you were able to get in South Africa. Go to Australia, look at the people that are building there. Those are the people that are coming from South Africa that have left South Africa. What did we do when we got political power? Is that we were failing to do the basic of things, and that is to then transform that which would have been the greatest asset towards the transformation of our people. We failed to then say, how do we then ensure, like the Afrikaners did? By the way, the Afrikaans is the only language in Africa that you can have a child learn from preschool up to a professor level. Tell me any other language. Zulu, Xhosa, no. You can't. That's something that we should have done and say, how do we translate whatever is in existence and to make sure that a child will be able to go from a preschool up to whatever level of education that they want to then get to, and make sure that we build an education system that begins to transform what has actually been transpired, a design to keep us backwards. What was happening before was that there was an element of ensuring that a child who was growing in an apartheid era would have actually been limited in terms of the kind of education that they would be able to then get, the opportunities that would have been open for that particular child. And what we have done since we gained independence is that we've just perpetuated and continued with that, where we haven't really ensured that we're able to then change the outlook from an education perspective. I was reading an article that talks about the 100, and it's a research paper actually, that talks about the 100 people that are connected, that are politically connected, that have amongst themselves shared a 1 trillion rand in the last 15 years in South Africa. 100 people that are politically connected, that amongst themselves have actually then ensured that 1 trillion rand is actually shared amongst themselves. And maybe the two of my colleagues have started talking to that we have then said we're looking at issues of empowerment, but who is it really empowering? And are we really having the right conversations going forward? To then say, can you go, and this is what I've been trying, even when I was the mayor in Swami, saying, can we really continue to then go and say, Gayton Mckenzie is previously disadvantaged? Can Gayton continue to go and compete with Musofi? Musofi who's putting in that first tender. But Musofi doesn't have the money that Gayton has got to put up front. And I'm not saying Gayton is doing this, but sometimes he put in a brown envelope. Sometimes he put a brown envelope to then ensure that a tender then is actually then going their way. Are we able to then talk about those things when we talk about transformation? Or are these things that we are not just sweeping under the carpet because the person that seems to be benefiting seems to be a black person? So I'm reminded of the story of an ex that is going in the forest and then talking to the trees and saying, no, I'm one of you, just because the handle is made of wood. So we're not really addressing the challenge. And the challenge is that we haven't really then said, when do we draw the line? So there's never been an issue about empowerment. Everybody must be empowered. So that goes without saying. But it should be that we then are able to then move on when we're talking about empowerment. It cannot be your Emisodis of this world that get in tenders year in, year out. It cannot be that it's the same businesses over and over again that are mentioned when we're talking about big business that are able to then, prosper. How do we then spread wealth? And how do we then change, the setup that we have from a government perspective and a policy perspective to then ensure that those that have actually then been powered don't continue to then use the same system and the same pointing system to advantage them over and over again. And lastly, here's the thing, Kathy. You will not be able to have a proper transformation and the building of a nation while you at a government level are actually then allowing the nonsense that is happening. You have lost, in the last decade, 295,000 jobs in the textile industry. Why? Because we've allowed for cheap imports to them coming to South Africa. Believe you me, you are going to lose your BMW, you're going to lose your Ford, you're going to lose Nissan. The companies that are already invested here creating in totality over 200,000 jobs and other businesses as well. You are going to lose those because we've allowed now for cheap imports to come in. Cars that are coming fully manufactured into the country and then we're turning a blind eye. And those cars are just, becoming fully manufactured. They're just coming here, they're being sold. What about those that have already invested here that are able to then manufacture, that are able to then assemble, that are able to then sell parts of the same vehicles here? And yet these are things that I'm not talking about. The fact that you are taking the best out of your fishery out overseas and we're importing cheap chicken here. That when you boil, one of them full of little chicken. For those who don't understand, somebody eating next week can translate. But I'm saying that, there are seriously policy issues at a government level that needs to be addressed if we are to talk about how do we then ensure that there is protection of the markets that we already have here in South Africa. But over and above that, that we're able to then transcend and we're able to then get more and more people into jobs, more and more people into education and into the education system, and more and more people becoming entrepreneurs. And these are some of the things that we now need to be talking to and talking about, Katie. And unfortunately, that has not been the conversation even at a national level that needs to happen.
All right, thank you for that. Dr. Albert?
Good morning, Kathy, and my fellow panelists. Good morning to the audience. The question that you have actually asked is very fundamental. In my view, it's the question that should have actually been asked 30 years ago, so that we will actually put in place mechanisms to ensure that indeed the interventions that we wanted to put in place actually are focused and targeted. Now, the issue of empowerment and transformation, you see, some people believe that when we took over power in 1994, we were somehow angry, perhaps justifiably so, because we had actually been oppressed. And there was a feeling of, we want to fix these people up, we're a bit emotional. So that some of the programs that we put in place actually were not really thought out through in order to be able to actually have an impact on the targeted, people that we wanted to empower. My fellow panelist here actually has touched on a very important issue, that of education. I think that's where we should have actually started, looking into the content of our education, asking ourselves what is it that we want to achieve, and then begin to put some kind of a roadmap, a short-term strategy, medium-term, and long-term. So rather than actually, adopting a shotgun approach in our attempt or intervention to uplift our own people. And the second point I want to raise actually is that of the neglect that I see in the rural areas and peri-urban areas. Most of our communities actually still live in rural areas. Now, if you look at the issue of infrastructure development, for instance, in the rural areas, we all want to see rural areas being transformed. We want to see rural areas, enjoying economic development. But how is that going to be possible if the roads actually are still impassable? There are no bridges, and there is no water. Electricity actually is a big problem. So those are the fundamental infrastructural, projects that I think the government should actually prioritize if we want to see, some development taking place in rural areas. And in fact, as a result of the absence of those things, then that promotes, the urban influx, the influx of people from rural areas into the urban areas, and thereby actually, create a problem of, squatters in places around Durban, around in major cities, should I say, and also putting a lot of strain on service delivery in those particular areas. So I think that if we want to actually empower our people, we need to begin to actually strategize and then have a strategic kind of, programs aimed at getting our people out of the economic doldrums that they find themselves in.
All right.
Thank you.
Dr. Mckenzie?
Yes, good morning to the panel. Good morning to the BBC leadership. Thank you for inviting us here. I think largely the subject of empowerment is a crucial one, and there needs to be a broader reflection on what have we achieved and what have we done over the last 30 years. Yeah? There are a lot of criticism around BEE, and clearly BEE has 7 elements, not just the ownership element, but I think when we focus on BEE, we zero in a lot on the ownership element. So maybe I'll zero in a bit on that side, on the ownership elements of BEE. The model we had was what we call a private equity light model. So you get a bit of debt, you buy into a company, and you own a minority share in it. You sit on the board, you get some dividends. If the market goes well or whatever, after some time, you make a bit of money if the debt is repaid, right? But it didn't really lead to the actual control of the productive assets. It didn't lead to the diversification and more competition in the economy, right? In fact, it's reinforced concentration patterns and may have even negated the growth of actual black business, right? So, in a funny way, you would say at some level, BE turned white companies black. At some level, it turned white companies black. The concentrated ownership patterns remain. The elites and the politically well-connected got their BE shares and deals without really assisting with any actual production. So our wealth that has come through with millionaires that have come up have not been, a lot of it has not really been linked to production. It's not been linked to employment creation. As MK, I think that's the core focus, is to build the economy, increase production, and get black people owning the means of production. And I think crucially, that's the only way we will develop this country, is by having very patriotic black business people, right? And the drive will be to get black people actually owning assets and developing those assets and creating jobs and driving the industrialization, etc., as we talk about. We've seen with a lot of white corporates, obviously the externalization of money. Net FDI in South Africa has been negative for quite a period of time. So we invest more offshore than we invest internally, right? We've seen very extractive practices, not just through FDI, but also through illicit financial flows, right? Those are some of the things we would want to directly attend to. And a lot of black business people, hopefully black patriots, yes, would be key to owning and controlling those assets and making sure that they reinvest in this economy. On the broader issue of inclusive growth, specifically, well, number one, in South Africa over the last 30 years, the economy has been so mismanaged. There's hardly been any growth. I mean, it's probably the most pathetic record of any industrialized or emerging market economy. We looked at some data, I think we're number 96 on growth. Our GDP per capita today, per individual, is less than it was in 2007. Right? The key to inclusive growth, or to growth that can actually transform the life of black people in general, is to grow productive capacity, which is linked to patriotic black business, but the key to it is to grow productive capacity. And with us, I think that would be the emphasis. And to do that primarily, you'll see quite a bit of financial sector reforms, what we call financial repression, directing credit to certain businesses, especially in tradable sectors, increasing competition and diversification in the banking sector in particular. So we would like to see the emergence of a lot of black banks, black-owned banks, not one or two, but preferably 100 or 200. We would like to see the emergence of policy banks, yeah? Banks that target particular regions. Yeah? Somebody says it can be done. I think in the US they've got 4,000 banks. Yeah? We have 5 banks that dominate the whole banking sector. It's not because it's how it's meant to be. It's been the policy decision of this government. And there's no way, on a broader context, you can shape production if you don't control money supply. You can't produce without money. If you don't control money supply, or you don't have access to money supply, you are out of the development process, you are out of the growth process. Those communities cannot develop. So in our view, right, both the issues, and they are interlinked, because in South Africa you can't have inclusive growth without black business. Not black business that shifts paper, that cuts deals, that sells tenders. Black business that actually owns the means of production, right? And number 2, you cannot have inclusive growth without having access to money supply, having access to banking, being able to channel money to particular communities, to particular businesses in a sustainable fashion over time to drive that development agenda.
All right. Thank you for that contribution. I'm going to invite onto stage to join us for this panel discussion, Mr. Zikalala, NEC member of the ANC. Just before we continue, so that you also have an opportunity to share some of your reflections on the theme. And of course, the question is really what you see the role of politics being in as far as the state of our economy, the state of affairs and the issues that are being raised by the Black Business Council today. Questions around inclusive growth, questions around transformation, and how our politics is influencing that.
No, thanks, Katie. Greetings to my colleagues, fellow panelists. Greetings to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Once more, my apologies to arrive late due to flight. Just to be specific on issues for discussion. I think we must first start from the causal factors. Why we are here? We're here because when we transformed in 1994, we seek to establish a truly non-racial, non-sexist, democratic society based on reconciliation. However, the contending parties did not agree on reconciliation. Africans and blacks in general accepted that we must coexist, white, blacks, and all together. Whites who were in power and in authority of business in particular did not accept the fundamental principle of transformation. So that is the first question, that the contestation is still on and influenced in particular by the resistance from white conglomerate to embrace transformation. So that would be my first point. My second point on that is the evolution of the BEE. The BEE came post-1994 and followed by land restitution, resisted by white. 2009, we came with IPA, Industrial Policy Plan, which was started, and in 2012, we augmented that by a Black Industrialist Policy. Black Industrialist Policy was the first measure that took Africans and Black from mere owning shares and participants in tendering system into a manufacturing sector. I can mention a number of companies that emerged from the Black industrialist policy. Fast forward from there, the government then see that the Black industrialist policy is not yet going far to ensure that we are able to manufacture and be productive in the country. Black cannot depend on the state alone. They need to participate in industries such as your agriculture, your mining, and others. I'm not going to go to history. In the mineral sector, the fundamentals of the economics is that the bigger the economy is, the more the opportunity to grow your GDP. With a small economy, you cannot grow the economy. So with a small population, while a population of 62 million, we compete with countries that are 1 billion and above. 2 weeks ago, Minister Mantashe launched a critical mineral strategy. This critical mineral strategy seeks to ensure that minerals that are strategic are not exported raw as it is, but are produced and manufactured to a final goods in the country. Currently, Minister Tau is working on a transformation fund. That transformation fund is building also on what we had initiated in a form of the Black Industrialist Program. There has been a progress. There are efforts, but there is resistance from the conglomerate, especially the white business owners. Not all of them, in particular the neoliberals who are males and white in particular. These are people who peddle lies against the BEE. I think former Premier, as my last point, former Premier Mazima Shilowa made a good contribution this past week on the moral justice of the BEE, that it sought to address inequality, the historical injustice of 300 years. This injustice, you do not disempower or marginalize those who benefited, but you are trying to elevate and support those who were oppressed. So my last point is, if politically there would be unity among those who were oppressed as a first fundamental building block for a unity on policy approach, that would be better. That is the first. And the second is then implementation. They must be united in Parliament, have a common vision, but also implementation in the private sector. We must not see people who are owning shares and fronting. There are many people who are in business, they own shares, whether it's property, it's mining companies, agriculture, construction, only to find that they are fronting. They are not involved, they are owning shares on the basis of name, but not in actual share value. Let alone that there are nowhere in operations where most of the capital is spent, because most of the capital in the industrial sector is spent in the value chain. And you find that we are not obsessed about the share you hold, yet money is distributed in the value chain. So even those who get these opportunities must not be willingly to become a front of the big business. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Zikalala. You speak about this resistance and opposition to effectively what is or has been a transformation agenda. But who is in charge? Who has been in charge? Who's been making the rules? Who's been enabling? Who's been making it possible?
Thank you for this critical question. Who is in charge? The manner in which we got liberated was not a takeover. It was not a takeover. There was no insurrection. We had to negotiate the liberation. There was a sunset clause that were put in place. So the ANC came in and put in place the BEE. For the first term, the ANC did not have a majority to change the policy framework. When we discussed...
Mr. Zikalala.
No. We did not have a
two-thirds majority.
We did not have. Let me tell you, in the last...
When did you not have a two-thirds majority?
In the sixth administration, as we didn't have the two-thirds, we said there must be a review of a constitution. All parties disagreed that we review Section 25. We did not have a majority. The only party that came to the discussion with conditions was EFF. They said to us, we're going to give you our support that will make you to meet the two-thirds, on condition that you do away with the property clause. And we cannot do away with the property clause.
But Mr. Zikalala,
All of us must own property rights, and therefore we have to own
Yesterday, Professor Mckenzie made a very important point around transformation. And one of the key issues that she had raised in as far as why we have not been able to see any progressive change when it comes to transformation is the fact that the ANC-led government, with a 2/3 majority, sat on the Equity Act for 25 years.
That is factually incorrect. Let us remember, the ANC only had a 2/3 majority between 2004 and 2009 only. Go to stats, go to IEC statistics. In 2020, in 1994, we never had a 2/3 majority. We never. Only in 2004 to 2009. Even after that, 2009, the ANC was dropped to 57%. That's not a 2/3 majority.
But you
So if you say we have had, wait, you must give us opportunity to explain facts that are recorded. They are there for you in the IEC. They are there for you in the literature that analyze the electoral patterns in South Africa. The only moment where the ANC had a 2/3 majority was a 5-year period between 2004 and 2009.
So basically, then, to round off this section, in your view, part of where the challenge around transformation has been is that you have not had enough power to do much about the resistance that you have experienced in as far as transformation is concerned.
The first point, which I started on, is the resistance by those who own means of production. Your neoliberals, who are against transformation in any field, they do it in all ways to stifle transformation. Let me make one clear example, which I believe all of us here will be familiar. Yes. 2017, April 1, government issued the public procurement preferential regulations. Here we set aside, it said in each industry as government, we will have a set aside for localization, set aside for women, set aside for youth, set aside for blacks in general. Those regulations were taken into court by the very same people who are resisting change. So you must not say we have enjoyed the luxury space and we have been seated on our laurels. No, it's not that.
Okay. Mr. Mckenzie?
I don't disagree with the Deputy Minister. I disagree wholeheartedly. let me come with it sexually. Firstly, you don't need the 2/3 majority to take decisions. You need 50 plus 1. Something that you just for 20 years. Secondly, there's no bread bank. No, don't tell me what happens. I'm talking about a food bank. There's no bread insurance company. Don't tell me about health insurance companies. I'm talking about food insurance companies. During apartheid, there was only 2 dollar billionaires in South Africa. Only 2. During democracy, there's 19. So the ANC did work, but they work for the very same people they try to criticize here on this panel today. The problem with our government is, and black people, we don't understand power. That's the truth nobody wants to say. You can talk big English for as much as you like, but now we'll never fix the problems of our people. Because how do you blame the white people if you're in power? If you resist, I look you up. You are going against transformation. and take your company and nationalize your company. We are in charge. The problem with people is we must be honest about these things. A guy can come from Poland. He starts a foundation. One person changing the whole government. I'm going to say something very controversial. I believe in it, and you must never vote for me if you don't believe in what I'm going to say. We need to suspend this constitution to sort out our problems. This constitution must be suspended. You look at how our government sees white people, white businesses. You take government to court and keep them 5 hours there, then all of us now nothing must move. In conclusion, I feel sorry because if the ANC could not effect change, as Mr. Zikalala saying, with 51%, what are they now going to do with 40%? We need to be realistic about these things. I went to Egypt this weekend. I was with Panyaza Lishusi, and the ambassador said to us, come, let me show you something. I went to see what is the construction site we've been told about for 30 years here. I could see Panyaza had tears in his eyes. The Egyptians took a decision, we're going to turn Egypt into a construction site. Go and see. Do yourself a favor when you have time. Go and see what is a construction site. Here we have 3 buildings, we have been told it's a construction site. We must be honest, the Constitution is the greatest impediment for us to take decisions. Imagine government is struggling to open a blood bank. How is that even right? And the GNU is concerned. I am so happy for the government of national unity. And I tell you why. And I tell you why I'm happy for the government of national unity. Because with some of us there, the status quo will never remain. Because some of us are not desperate for a job. We are employable. We are not there. We will say what we need to say. And if it doesn't come right, we will go out of the GNU and go and prepare for contestation in the next election. But I think the GNU is the last line before Armageddon. Let me explain. I listened to the doctor there, speaking very nicely. But he says FDI, foreign direct investment. Now let me tell you something. There's not a single businessman that has got 20 million or 30 million that will invest in a country with no property rights. Nobody is that stupid. So you can't talk like MK saying we're going to expropriate without compensation. I want expropriation without compensation deep down in my heart. But it's not possible. Let's be honest. A country with no property rights will never get FDI. So let us not talk this side about growth and then you say you're going to expropriate. We must understand our reality. Our reality is we are being governed by world markets that are anti.
But then in the same breath you say suspend the Constitution, which is the very tenet of the rule of law that safeguards the very
rule of law?
The very property rights that you're talking about.
What the memorandum when I said, well, let me answer you. I don't know why you're saying exactly without giving my answer, sorry. You say exactly, you don't have my answer. Democracy is the will of the majority. Would you agree with me? Democracy is the will of the majority. You don't just wake up and say, I change the Constitution. You have a referendum. And you ask the people, do you want us to change the Constitution? Because we're going to do 1, 2, 3. What's the will of the people? There's nobody that can say 1, 2, 3 or 4 or 5. What's the will of the people? So we have to change the Constitution, otherwise majority of people will die poor.
So you agree though that whatever issues that may be stemming from a policy perspective that perhaps have their roots in the Constitution, it's not as easy as saying we must suspend the Constitution. As you have stated here this morning, that even any change, as Mr. Zikalala was talking about a constitutional review, that there has to be process, that even the idea of just suspending the Constitution is politicking. It's a
Let me
catchphrase.
make you an example that is not politicking. Let me make you a perfect example. South Africa has got around 70 murders a day. 70, every day. Women get killed in this country like daily. El Salvador had 49 killings a day. South Africa 70. 2019, El Salvador chose a guy as a new president called Bukele. Bukele came into power and he said, it can't be. Well, we have 49 people dying a day. He went to the people, they agreed, they're going to suspend parts of the Constitution. Bukele then built a prison, a 60,000 room prison. He locked all the gangsters up. He locked all the criminals up. Today, El Salvador is the second safest country in the world. He did that within 5 years. Canada #1, El Salvador #2. So it's us. You kill, you go eat, the president said you must get bail, you come kill again. A woman says, my husband, I'm scared of him. They take him in, he gets bail, he come kill the very same woman. He then gets bail, he comes and kill the girlfriend. What South Africa needs is an Easter hunt. Somebody that will fix stuff. Thank you very much.
Before I engage, I don't know if I really want to enter this topic, but what I will say to the good minister is that currently, as we speak, we are in a period of constitutional review. The Constitution has actually been amended 19 times since the start of our democracy. And as we stand right now, we are in a period wherein any one of you, yourself included, Minister, have an opportunity to give your constructive input at a clause level. Which clause do you have a problem with? You want it changed? You have the power to drive that change. So this very Constitution that we want to suspend, in fact, empowers us to change it if we don't want, or if there's something that we disagree with. And I actually would really appeal to the people in this room that let's not be swayed by single silver bullet solutions. Running a country is complex. It is complex. And it requires considered thinking about how we approach these solutions. And it requires also participation. Our country actually is what is called a participatory democracy. This is actually what I want to touch on, Kathy, is that fundamentally what we lack and what we don't do enough of as the citizens in this country is to participate in our democracy. We don't. We've just come out of an election in 2024. We are fresh out of an election. You had a chance. We are in a period right now of constitutional review. Who has submitted inputs? Legislation is getting amended, reflected on, reviewed every single day. Who is raising their hand themselves to join political parties to fight the battle at the coalface? The very issues that we see, and mind you, this is not a bold, blanket criticism, because I want to commend the citizens. I think the electoral outcomes of 2024 started to really give voice to what the people want to see. The fact that the ANC will never see another 2/3 majority is a step in the right direction. Now the question becomes, what next? What next? I'm asking you, because as the citizens of this country, as the people in this room, we have to decide what comes next and what type of country we want to live in. And personally, for me, as a woman, as someone who is often part of the groups of the most vulnerable in society, as a black woman, I enjoy the protections of this Constitution. Yes. I am a beneficiary of the protections of this Constitution. Where we fail, and what we fail at dismally, is to ensure that the people that we mandate to go and represent us in public leadership are quality people, competent people, people who actually know what they're doing when they get into those jobs. We've had 3 decades of this country's democracy, and in those 3 decades, let's talk some numbers. In the first 10 years, we had economic growth, growing economy actually, of circa 3.3% per decade. The second decade, 2004 to 2014, similarly, upward trajectory. We're growing at about 3.8 to 4% on average. The last decade, 2014 to 2024, we have been growing at 0.8% on average. Today, we've just received the recently quarterly growth figures. We are sitting at 0.1% nationally. And some in our society are celebrating those wins. That is our issue. So in the last 19 years, it's been the same constitution, but who are the people who have been driving us? And have they been driving us in the right direction? Is the question we need to be asking ourselves.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Gayton. You know, Minister Zigalala must not lie to the people. I'm looking at Stats SA results. I'm looking at SAUs from government gazettes. I'm looking at the newspaper clips from 1999, 2004, 2009, where you have 2/3 majority. From 1999, Thabo Mbeki had 2/3 majority. Numbers, real numbers there. No, go to stats. Actually, you said we must go on. So you had 2/3 majority. Let me put something clear here. There's nothing wrong with our constitution. There's something wrong with the leadership and administration of government. Let's deal with that. Let's address that. Section 25 that wants to be changed talks about expropriation and how you can actually go and expropriate. What we are not talking about is the corruption that has taken place when that Section 25 has actually been put in place. People have been owning cabbage farms. I'm not going to mention names here, but people have been owning cabbage farms. People going and buying farms, politically connected, knowing what is down the line, what is coming in the line. In the pipeline, because you know that the expropriation or there is going to be a claim on that piece of land, politicians and those that are connected go and buy this piece of land, and then they themselves are now the claimants, or they themselves also now become the sellers of those pieces of land. And we're talking about how this is now translated, or this has actually then morphed into a corrupt activity. We don't have a problem of policy. We have a problem of management and a problem of leadership in this country. So people go and buy a piece of land for 200,000 rand and sell it for 20 million. We're not addressing that. As I'm talking to you right now, in Northwest, Mafike, Tati Mangobe, before 1994, had built a village where members of the then Kutatwana parliament could go and stay when they were in parliament, right? The ANC government has run that infrastructure down, stole everything, including the teaspoon, to a point where now they have to go and make sure that people are settled, the same members of parliament are settled somewhere. Now as I'm talking to you, they're paying 70,000 rand a member a month, accommodated in bed and breakfast somewhere, 70,000 a month per person. While you have infrastructure that you couldn't take off. So when we're talking about empowerment, we need to talk about the resources that are available and how you channel those resources towards empowering a greater number of people, not ensuring that you create a small clique of politically connected billionaires and millionaires at the expense of everybody else. But here's another thing, Keith. In the period before 1994, the then government built ISCO, the then government built SASO. You had one company that was partly state-owned but partly privately owned, Consol, which was the biggest producer of glass and glass products in Africa. You had what we then used to be called the Pretoria Metal Pressers, which now morphed into Denel, which now is literally then going down the drain. These were industries that were built under apartheid. Please tell me which industries have these ones built? Which industries have they built? Now, you cannot talk about only means of production when you are in government, cannot actually then say, these are the opportunities that are there, then let's build.
All right.
You can actually then compete. Use the state machinery to assist those that want to compete to build industries, and make sure that you channel money towards them so that you are able to then bring them up. That hasn't been the case. And they have to take full responsibility of what transpired, instead of blaming those that have actually used the opportunity and the resources that they have to not only empower themselves, but to empower those that look like them. Thank you.
All right. Alfred?
Thank you, Kathy. I think the elephant in the room is not the Constitution, as my other fellow panelists have said. The real elephant in the room is lack of political will on the leadership to actually implement the programs that are there. They are beautiful programs, but they are busy actually collecting dust in the shelves of leadership.
How do you think the GNU is going to change that, or could change that?
In fact, the advent of the GNU is a blessing in disguise, because we are now drawing those shelves and then actually finding those programs and asking why are they not being implemented. For instance, the issue of land. I am chairing the portfolio committee on land reform and rural development. There is not, up to this point, only 4% of the land is actually in the hands of black people. How do you explain that after 30 years? How do you explain that? The instruments are there. The Constitution actually is not preventing, the expropriation, as my colleague here has said. It does not actually prevent that, but it sets out the process and procedures that need to be followed to expropriate the land. How much land is in the hands of the state itself? Why has that land not been, transferred to the black majority people? That is the question, and nobody wants to actually answer that. What is the state doing with so much land? Why is it not being transferred to the people? So the Constitution itself is not an elephant in the room. Let us actually do what we need to do for our own people.
Thank you for that contribution. So in a moment after Dr. Tanzi has given his own response, I'm then going to open it up to our delegates to also ask questions only, please. Only ask questions. I'm giving everybody 45 seconds to do that because I know many of you will want to contribute. Please, you can see the number of delegates that are on that are seated on this panel this morning. So I'm giving you the heads up in advance so that when I start taking hands, and I'm taking the first hands that I see. So late hands won't be accommodated. Not now. We'll come back when I officially open. Dr. Tanzi, go for it.
Thank you. I think the debate is fairly interesting, but I just think we need to take a step back and figure, why are we here? Right? Go back historically. How did you end up with such mass black poverty? Right? One was the expropriation of land without compensation. Right? Two was the denial of education. In economics, there are two factors of production that we know. One is capital. The other new one is what we call human capital. Right? There's no people in the world that have developed without owning land. Right? None. In fact, the basis of development in Asia was land reform. When it's land reform, economic diversification, and financial repression. Right? So yes, when we come into power, we will expropriate land without compensation. We'll expropriate all of it. And people will be given leases. I mean, some of the wealthy amongst us live in Waterfall, right? Do they own the land? Do they invest in Waterfall? Yes. So for the rest of the country, what's the problem? If it works for Waterfall, why can't it work for other areas? They don't own the land, do they? People will be given leases to use land for residential or for industrial purposes.
So just to understand, you say the state will expropriate all land?
All of it.
Okay.
All of it. Not a single inch.
So
will be
nobody
owned by
will
an
have any
individual.
title deeds?
They will have leases. It's there in our
So all
policy
of us,
document.
even if you've paid off your house,
You'll
forget
have a
about
lease.
it. You'll have a lease. Is it 99 years at Waterfall? Or is it a bit longer? Is it a...
It will depend on for what purpose. It's very clear. And this is crucial. This is crucial. Because some of the people acquire the land illegally. It's not necessarily to take your house or to take your land. Some of the people acquire the land illegally. Some of the land, well-centered land. One of the things we know, for example, about South Africa and the high unemployment rate is the reservation wage. People are paying too much in terms of transport to come into the cities. We can't change
But they've already paid too much to get those title deeds and houses already. You would be
No,
sitting...
but nobody will be removed from their home. They will just, it will be transferred from the title deed into a lease. Removed from their home. But be that as it may, it's a crucial part of our strategy, and that is what will drive South Africa to grow. You cannot, what happened under apartheid is when the land was taken.
Dr. Tante, yesterday, one of the discussions we had was around the challenges around reviving the economy and the role of agriculture, and how you move subsistence farmers to being commercially viable, the majority of which are black farmers. And the fact that they do not have title over their land is a significant issue, because when they go to look for funding, they have no assets to present before banks that need that to be able to give them financing to invest in their businesses. And you are saying that instead of doing that, you would do the opposite.
No, it's not the opposite. Banks are happy to finance you building a house in Waterfall, isn't it? You have a lease. You don't have time. I mean, seriously, are banks not funding construction debt?
Okay.
Offices. So I'm just saying, remember, legal title can take different forms. But if people have 99-year leases on that farm or whatever, banks will easily fund it. Like they're funding the construction of offices, they're funding the construction of homes, beautiful homes in Waterfall. Why would they refuse?
Okay.
So
All right,
I'm saying the type of land, the type of land ownership for the claim is really, in my view, irrelevant to the financing decision, as long as they know you have security over that property. You will fund it. But let me just finish. I think it's a very important discussion for a simple reason. Right? I'll go back to why are we poor? Land was expropriated. People were forced to sell their manual labor. They had to go to the homes, to the farms, to the mines. We had the Bambata Rebellion in KZN, where they imposed poll tax to go and force people to work. So when you go around the suburbs in Joburg, going of these parts, because property was expropriated and taken from black people essentially, they've become effectively mass laborers. Unless they sell their labor, they cannot eat. Unless black people effectively sell their labor, they cannot eat. Then you have the second part, which was the denial of education. Because human capital perhaps give you higher wages than what you barely need to survive, and you can save and accumulate.
Okay.
So those are the key issues of how do we find ourselves here, and how do we take the country out of here? Crucially, how do we develop it? Asia, Singapore, Taiwan, China, Japan, all of them started, in fact, every country that is developed above emerging markets started their development journey based on land expropriation. And if South Africa wants to deal with the fundamental issues, land expropriation is not negotiable.
Okay, Dr. Tanti, we'll have to leave it there. Mrs. Sigalala, we're back to the issue of the ANC and election outcomes. 30 seconds. I'm watching you on the timer. You want to respond to
I want to say, to request that I've got a stat from IEC. Someone else present it, not me. Because we must be very sure life is our life. I'm not going to come here and mislead. The ANC in 1994 got 62%, over 50, but below 2/3 that you require to change the constitution. Then 65, then in 2004, 69%, then dropped to 65, 62, 57, 42. So that's nice. Mr. Msimanga is lying. The second point, next, let's go to infrastructure development in Africa. How many South African projects are registered? How many of Egypt are registered? Egypt has developed 3 areas. The New Cairo, the range from Old Cairo to New Cairo. They've developed 1 city of tourism in the south. South Africa is connected between Johannesburg and Pretoria. The Midrand is no more like it was before. South Africa has put a fast train, a Gautrain. South Africa has connected Durban and Pietermaritzburg.
Okay, Minister.
In the same period. So let's be scientific and talk facts as they are. I'm not opposed to the reality that we are not doing well in transforming the economy. That is true, but let's be accurate in the factual analysis we are providing.
All right, thank you for that. I think what we'll do is that we leave it to the scribes of the meeting to do fact check for us, but part of it probably, Minister, is also just down to semantics and what has been possible in the very real sense that simply was not utilized. I'm going to start on the left end of the room and we begin here in the front. Yes, sir. Please. Oh, where are the ushers with the microphones? Please, if we can start on that side of the room. And while we do that, I know that at 11 o'clock, 2 of our panelists are going to have to leave. So Msimanga and Rachel Ramaphosa, so please just bear that in mind. We'll give them an opportunity to exit the stage. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I see Solis pulling a Trump, pulling all the receipts. Okay, my question is, from yesterday there has been a growing concern that the 30 years of democracy in South Africa may not have yielded the progress many had hoped for, as a large segment of the population continue to face the oppression and remain trapped in poverty. Given the current state of the economy, I just want to check if it's still possible for South Africa to recover, and if so, how long might it take to achieve at least a meaningful and a sustainable transformation?
Okay, thank you. At the back, ma'am, I give you, can I go for, yes, the lady wearing the white top? Yes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. Within the context of FDI and the conversations from yesterday about PIC, my question now is, in 2022 there were amendments made to the Reg 28 of the Pension Funds Act to increase the offshore exposure from 30 to 45%. Now then my question becomes, how did that benefit the, I should have stood up. How did that benefit the local, how did that benefit South Africa? How did that benefit black businesses in particular? Who benefited from that? How is that moving the country forward? Because we've been talking about the need for FDIs, and yet even what we've got control over, we decided to take it out of the country.
All right, then we move on right to the back of that row still. There's a gentleman at the back in the grey suit. Please stand, sir. Grey suit, blue Yes.
Thank you, Program Director. I'm worried to see our, particularly the GNU, pointing fingers among each other, because I thought it's a high time that they have views, they put together, and they come to us with a way forward. Now, to find the Minister Mckenzie, to find Mr. Msimang pointing fingers to Deputy Minister Zikalala is unfair, because I'm supposed to submit those solutions that they have. Now, they're no longer in opposite side, they're part of the government. Thank you very much.
Okay. Let me come to the middle. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Program Director. My name is Rufuno Ratsi. I just have one connected question. Straight and direct is, what makes the debate of potential review of BEE due at this stage? I want to believe that we don't have enough evidence of transformation. That debate for me does not find a place yet in this country, but I'm yet to be convinced why it finds a place. Gaps of policies have identified. I think what we are doing as a mistake in this country is to over-reflect on the status quo. What are the recommendations? These are joint parties. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Tsepo Mungwe from the BRICS Business Council. I'm a secretary at the Skills Development Working Group. I just wanted to ask how the government could partner with us pertaining skills development, because just like the MKP and the IFP member mentioned that they know of programs. We have a program, we're going to Brazil in July, but we don't see a lot of engagement with public and private to enable us to actually shine. We've got BRICS Future Skills. We partner with the largest corporations, Ministry of Education in China, Russia, and all of that, but we don't see an interaction between the government and the BRICS Business Council Skills Development Working Group. So we really need you guys. It's in July. We need pragmatic solutions. Funding.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay. Is it on? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm Alvin Bell, stalwart of the Black Business Council. Can I just ask one question and one fact check? Firstly, President Mckenzie, you are passionate about sovereign wealth fund. And that is something that we really need. The transformation fund is going to be far too little. We need a proper plan in place to empower blacks. And I would also like to know from Minister Mckenzie and other panel members their views on that. Just a fact check. Leader Soli were referring to 1 trillion at 10,000 people, I think. Can you just confirm that there is a fact? Thank you.
1 trillion in terms of?
1 trillion has been distributed, accumulated by 10,000 people. 100 people. Yeah, just
the source of that, information. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, at the back.
Morning, delegates and presenters. I was listening with so much keenness on what Mayor from Rice Zansi raised, on the issues that he raised. But I would want to pose questions. My name is Ndwani Mukiti, by the way, to introduce myself. What instruments do you think we should utilize to revitalize displaced economic centers across the country? Because the problem is that we have had that as raised by Solim Simang in saying that there are many displaced economic centers across the country that pull people to Gauteng, Cape Town and others. What instruments are at our disposal that we can utilize? Actually, the same question, because Solim Simang raised it, I would want him to hear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, if you can please stand.
Good morning, Program Director, Ministers, and all of us. My name is Nelisi Wenjanase. I'm from sewing industry, and I'm coming from rural areas of Pongolo, KZN. So I would like to reflect on the statements that has been made by the ministers yesterday that the small businesses are holding 70% of the economy here in South Africa. And they also said the small businesses have more ideas how can the economy can be turned around. So I would like to know when is the time where the small business will be called together and present those ideas to the ministers so that they can turn the economy around, especially in rural areas, because I'm going to speak on behalf of sewing industries. There are many women sitting there at home having experience of sewing, but there is no work. We do have those ideas that can change the economy. But I would like to know when is that opportunity is going to come for us. So,
okay.
Yeah, I would like to be invited by one of the ministers so that I can.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Let me go to the back.
Hi, morning. My name is Kahisola from Fika Hive Energies. Prasoli, Ponale Hebiti Amaka. That's why I got two. So that you realize, Bophuthatswana was formed in 1977. It was then called Botswana before Botswana moved their national to Gaborone, Leseruwe. And then secondly, we need not to have everything in a blanket approach. You cannot pay the same person in the rural area the same as a person in the urban area. Again, Prasol, the lady you're sitting next to, she's a benefactor of BEE and the policies of empowering black people. So we have a habit of lying as blacks, but we need to be patriotic. And we do need to change certain laws for in order black people to be empowered.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. Please stand.
Thank you so much, Program Director. Greetings to the panel. My name is Mckenzie. I must say I'm not particularly worried about the MK's views on land reform. I think with having spent almost a decade in government and seeing almost nothing to show for it, I don't think that's particularly concerning. But I do want to address a little bit of what looks like political schizophrenia here. You know, we talk about the deepening of ownership concentrations and patterns and trends that flow from there when your own presidents deepened those trends while embedding a superstructure of grand-scale corruption in the public procurement space, and as a consequence has almost emptied out any potential for any affirmative action policies to deliver any meaningful redress. You know, what I haven't heard from the panel is enough discussion here around how the transformation agenda must be anchored by clean, effective, and compassionate governance. I think one of the problems here, and what I'm actually quite exhausted by, is this ongoing conflation of incompetence with blackness and with black leadership. But I think to the extent that we as ourselves don't take seriously making sure that we elect the best amongst us to lead and to make sure that we appoint political leaders who are themselves competent, we're always going to have to deal with that. Please can we have a little bit more about that from the panel? Thank you.
Yes, sir. It will be my last one.
Okay. No, thank you, Program Director, and greetings to your panelists. I wanted to ask about the preferential procurement. Also to Ms. Buishwa, since she's also the MEC of GDAT, where many people do not have access into that procurement space. But we know that it comes at a cost and there's high corruption rate. So the question is, do we need a preferred procurement on its current form, or do you believe that it needs to be changed so that it can have great access for many people, especially in sectors such as your seed and your agro-processing sectors that are not easily accessible by black farmers and Indonesian farmers? Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. So quite a number of questions there, some of them were specific. I'm going to hand over to our panelists, but I'm going to give Vuiswa and Soli the opportunity to go first, because I know you have to leave urgently, and I'll give the rest of the panelists an opportunity to answer once you have exited.
Oh, thank you very much. I wish to answer the gentleman there in the back, but I did not break it. You know, listening is a very critical skill, but also listening for understanding is very important. I said that Mangobu, which is factual, built the village where the members of the then parliament of Butatswana, it was called Butatswana, whether you want to call it Botswana, I didn't say Botswana, I said Butatswana. So you wanted to get a cheap shot, you got it, I hope you're happy. The 3 seconds of fame has just been given to you. The issue here, I think, here's what we need to then respond to, and I think this comes throughout a number of things. I've said this, that the problem that we're sitting with, Kathy, is not a problem of the Constitution, first of all. It's the problem of management and the problem of leadership that we need to then be addressing. And I think it goes through a number of questions or concerns that have been raised. Whether we are able, if we are funding the right kind of training that is taking place. I think as a country, we haven't done one thing that is strategic. We haven't defined what kind of economy we want to then drive going forward. Because if you do that, that talks to the kind of training initiatives that you will actually be biased towards ensuring that you find a little bit more. That we haven't done, and I think that's a conversation we need to then be having. The second thing is that we now need to then review what we had said in the National Development Plan and say, are the goals that we set to achieve in the National Development Plan goals that are actually then being achieved? If they're not being achieved, what are we doing to then ensure that we're able to then drive that growth that we spoke about, and make sure that the plans that we set ourselves, as my colleague from the IFP had said, that sometimes we put things, we put excellent documentation, excellent plans, but the gathered task cannot really get us where we need to then do. So that is something that we now need to then look at going forward. The other problem that we're sitting with is this here, Kathy. Somebody was speaking about the Red 25 and the issue around the foreign investment. And here I have to agree with Dr. Mckenzie. No foreign investor, no investor will want to then come and put money where they cannot have security of tenure. That's the problem. If you cannot give people security of tenure, you're not going to have anybody putting money here. The African, if you listen to the former, I think it's the former the former FNB CEO was talking about how we are sitting with over 1 trillion rand in cash reserves in South Africa, and people are not willing to then invest there, right? They're not willing to invest because there is policy uncertainty, and we need to then get to that point where we then say, we are going this way, this is what we are doing, and then that's when you're going to get people to invest. And also, the companies like your Moody's are looking at where our own confidence is as a country as well. They are looking at whether you are yourself investing in what you want to then achieve. And if you're not going to invest, they are not going to then encourage foreign investors to then come into your country. So that's where the challenge is. We are not investing because ourselves we are not certain of where we are going. And that is one of the issues that needs to be then addressed. We need to have policy certainty. We need to then ensure that the solutions that we are putting on the table, they're not just ending up on paper, but these are things that we're rolling out. And that also answers the question that my brother was asking about, why is it that people are running into the city centers? Because that's where the economy seems to be going, and the reason for that is that because infrastructure is concentrated in those areas. You have easy access of roads, easy access of water, electricity for those that are producers. And how do we then ensure that we roll out infrastructure that goes into the rural areas so that the rural areas can actually then become attractive for people to then go and open up other businesses, factories and all of that for them to become economically active as well. And not just looking at agriculture. And by the way, agriculture is now moving into the 21st century here in South Africa, where we are also now looking at technology being part of the agricultural sector as well. So we now need to then ensure that we place some serious investment into those particular spaces. And then the gentleman was asking about the documentation and the fact check. This is a paper that is written, so I'm willing to share it with you. You can have a look at that and then do the fact check for yourselves.
All right.
you. Thank you for that. I'm going to try and answer some of the questions in a clustered form and really deal with what I think are three very critical themes. Question one is, what is the future, really, of Black economic empowerment and transformation? We've spoken extensively and critiqued it in some instances, but what needs to happen now, I think, is a question. And from Rising Zanzi's position, our view is that Black affirmative action and Black economic empowerment has a role to play in our country and in our economy. We support it. But we are equally able to provide a critique in saying that it has not gone far enough. So what then needs to happen, Kathy? What needs to happen now, as I have said, is that we need to use this lever, this policy mechanism, to channel and fund industrialization in particular. Unfortunately, and I'm touching on the point that the gentleman made there about public procurement, the way in which we have used and understood public procurement, unfortunately, has the biggest outcome of our public procurement is in the creation, unfortunately, of intermediary businesses and a number of businesses that do not, as many of the colleagues said here, unfortunately still to this day do not control industries. We don't have Black-owned national grocery retailers. We all eat every day. We don't have enough production capacity to be a core pivoting in terms of what the policy seeks to achieve. Another key element of what the policy must seek to achieve, and it's implied, but it's not explicit. It's something that must happen. And further to that, and I want to address the gentleman at the back, you are 100% right. And it is a function of certainly the early stages of Black economic empowerment that opened the doors for young, talented Black people to get into management positions, to lead organizations, to lead in government. What it should not be is a proxy for incompetence. And we shouldn't allow that as Black people. So we ourselves must also hold ourselves to those high standards, because today, this policy is not fit to lead. And those of us who find ourselves in whatever space we may find ourselves in, ourselves are being undermined. You don't even have to be in government anymore. As a business person, you are taken to not be credible because you are Black. You are supposedly a BEE beneficiary. Meanwhile, the biggest tenderpreneur there is sitting in Washington, Elon Musk. He's the biggest tenderpreneur beneficiary of state revenue. So, but we don't call him a tenderpreneur. So we must change this whole ethos, but it starts with a foundation of good governance, good leadership, merit, and ensuring that we put our best forward to be the ones that drive and front face this policy. That's the first issue. The second issue, as I'm saying, is that we have to become absolutely uncompromising in the next 5 years about what the metrics of success are. The metrics of success are unemployment. We must bring that number down. 36% unemployment is absolutely unacceptable. It's untenable. Yeah. Our democracy is under threat at these levels. That's number one. Number two, the other key negotiable is industrialization, and that speaks to infrastructure development. So whatever capital is available in our market, and we have deep capital markets, we have 1.2 trillion rand that is sitting in our domestic capital markets that must be deployed towards industrial and growth, which is driven by infrastructure. But partly, and we must again acknowledge this, we must deliver that infrastructure. Let's not just spend on it. Let's also put the people in place who have capacitated to actually deliver it. And not overprice simple things. Why must we pay 300 million for a tap when we all know how much a tap costs? So I think the conversation must go beyond whether BEE is good or bad. We can all agree it's good, we are all here. South Africa has registered the fastest growth of a middle class in the last 30 years. We now sit with the middle, 7% of our population is middle class, 4.8 million people, many of whom have been taken out of abject poverty in the last 30 years. This thing has worked, but it can work more. But to do that, we need to put people who can drive in the driver's seat. And it starts, and I'm not campaigning, but I'm campaigning, in 2026. The municipal local elections are where the rubber hits the road. Let's not just be fascinated with local elections because we've got our Gayton who are on the ballot. Let's also look in our own municipalities and ensure that we capacitate our municipalities with the best people who can turn our cities around and ultimately turn our country around.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your question. I'm going to come to you in a moment, Mr. Mckenzie. Let me just give Mr. Msimang and Ms. Ramakopa an opportunity to exit the stage. You can exit to the left. And then I ask the two gentlemen, please move in a bit closer once they're off, so that we don't have that awkward gap in between. Yes, Mr. Mckenzie.
I'm just welcoming them close. I was asked 2 questions here. I want to start with the gentleman in the back that said we are in the GMU. We are now different here. Just 3 quick points I want to make. Firstly, I was not invited here as a minister. Kathy introduced me as the president of the Patriotic Alliance. Now, being in a coalition like the GNU, does not mean we must agree or be under each other's spells. We differ, and we're not going to agree to something that I know for a fact is untrue, what Mr. Zikalala said here. It's untrue if you say you only need 2/3 majority to effect real, meaningful change. Let me show you the strengths of the GNU. The GNU is very strong. In Japan, because of the budgets differences, government was changed. Germany, the government fell. Paris, the same thing. South Africa, we are still standing strong as the government of national unity. Standing strong, even in your relationship, having a strong relationship with your partner doesn't mean you don't differ. We differ. That's why we're going to grow. Because it's not your boss, no boss, nobody's under nobody's spell. I'll tell you a funny story. It's well documented, my fight with the Democratic Alliance. We fight every day in the Western Cape. I mean, we are enemies. So we went to Japan with the deputy president. And we had to speak on culture. I had to speak on culture. But the person I was supposed to speak on mining, Mr. Mantashe, couldn't make it. So I'm like, hey, I might be asked to speak on mining. Let me do some homework. But I got flu. My flu was so bad. And then the DP sends me a message. Minister, at that time I can't properly speak. So I go out, I'm like, and John still is in company, like, you look very sick. I said, flu. He says, I've got tablets. I said, no, I'm fine. I'm thinking this one. They want to kill me from the streets. So I go to the chemist. When I got to the chemist, I'm trying to explain in English that the pharmacist doesn't understand. So he gives me tablets. I try to do. He keeps on showing my stomach. So I look at the tablet, I'm like, this is birth control. I got back, John C. Reason gave me a pack of tablets. It's like, this will help you. I got in my room. I'm sick. Now I have a choice, am I dying or am I resting? So I take a picture of those tablets. I said to my girlfriend, I said, if I don't wake up, John C. Reason gave me just tablets. You are just go. And there's many of those stories I can relate to you. How we are trying, how we getting to trust each other, how we are fighting each other. The question the gentleman has asked about BE and what I think about the sovereign wealth fund. You can't build wealth without collateral. I'm going to repeat that. You can't build wealth without collateral. You can't. And anybody to tell you you can build wealth without collateral is a liar. South Africa, what I would have done, you asked me what I would have done. I will cancel BE in totality if I'm in power. I'll cancel it totally. What I will bring in the place of BE is an empowerment bank. One bank. How does that bank work? Every person that has a certain company that has been empowered previously, and every white person in this country should contribute a percentage of the turnover towards the bank. I'm going to repeat that. Instead of telling white people, come, make me a 26% partner, I will not do that. That's not business, that's counterproductive. I will tell every company and every white person with a company, give 1% of your turnover. That will go to the bank. That will be $1 trillion bank with first grants. That bank will then give money, loans, collateral. You get money without collateral from the bank. Your blackness will be your collateral. Your black skin. And there will not be you getting today 10 million. You are there next week again. You have to show what you've done. We'll have people empowering you, mentoring you. That's what I would have done. Lastly, you know, words are very nice. English is a very nice language. We like to use big English words. Triple B. What I sometimes listen to people like, yo, what are you even talking about? The reality on the ground is different. We have to take hard decisions. The ANC is getting an F, but they don't deserve an F. The ANC should be getting a D. But the reason why they themselves don't know why they're getting an F, because they budget for South Africans. But the budget is being set by people that is not counted by the census. Illegal foreigners. Baba Hambe, and you will see jobs will appear, you will see, and that's the truth. In Gauteng, they lost 5 billion in budgets because they never counted the illegal foreigners in Gauteng. And if you check the equitable share that's been given to Panyaza and them, exclude the illegal foreigners. 6 million illegal foreigners are running around here. 2 million of them have jobs, waiters, whatever. So when we chase them away, immediately we have 2 million jobs for locals. But you want to be too nice as South Africans, but you are poor. Let us get rich, all of us, but let's take the unpopular decisions. Baba Ham.
Well, thank you. Very interesting to hear such a slogan. There was a first question about where to from here. I think we need to, in order to do justice to the issue of empowerment, we need to actually prioritize education, prioritize skills development, prioritize job creation, especially for our youth. Because we can't afford to have such an army of young people roaming about without jobs. That is actually going, that's a powder keg. We are actually sitting on a time bomb. Now, on education, I think we need to actually also come closer and look at the kind of education that we're busy dishing out to our children. Yeah. Is it the kind of education that is going to help take this country forward? If I may make an example, we know that there are so many social workers sitting out there at home because there is just no job for them. But go to the universities, lecture rooms are beaming with our children still studying social work. So where are they going to be employed when even those that have graduated actually are not employed? Why don't we intervene, stop the conveyor belt of social workers, and actually begin to introduce the kind of education content that is actually going to be helpful to our economy. So that is one thing. The second one is the skills, the artisans. Now we are talking about, infrastructure development, but nobody is actually talking about infrastructure maintenance. Maintenance of infrastructure. The cities, your Durban, your Johannesburg, they really do not need much infrastructure development, but they need maintenance. Is there maintenance? No. Now, how do you make a provision of 8% for maintenance? It means you're not serious. Our roads are actually dilapidated. We have buildings here which are actually falling apart. Why? There is no real focus on maintaining what we have. So I think that as part of job creation, we should actually upskill our people, skill those that are in the TVET colleges, for instance. Let's actually produce our own artisans. Now, lastly...
Nothing. Sure. About the ownership.